Nicholas Claxton walked into TD Garden on Friday night and played the kind of game that forces an opponent to look twice. Brooklyn beat Boston, and the scoreboard was only part of the story. The real headline was a center who dominated every possession with 18 points, 11 rebounds, and 12 assists. It did not feel like an ordinary performance. It felt like a message. And for the Boston front office, especially Brad Stevens, it might be a message that demands a response. Before we continue, if you want to stay ahead of every Celtics update, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and click the hype button right now, because what comes next could reshape this season. The narrative gets even more interesting when we compare both matchups. Just a few days earlier, Claxton struggled badly, shooting 1 for 9 and getting completely neutralized by the Celtics defense. Then suddenly, in the rematch, he became a playmaking engine, a pick-and-roll conductor and a scoring threat. That turnaround is not just a coincidence. It highlights growth, adaptability, and a skill set Boston might desperately need as they evaluate the long-term future of the center position. Claxton has been consistent this season with an average of 14.6 points, 7.3 rebounds, 3.9 assists, and 1.4 blocks while shooting 57.6% from the floor. And those numbers do not even include the triple-double in Boston. That is called upward trajectory, and every contender pays attention to players trending upward. Financially, things get even more compelling. Claxton earns roughly $25.4 million this season, and his contract declines over the next 2 years after the 2025 to 2026 campaign. A productive center whose salary goes down instead of up becomes a rarity in the current league economy. Meanwhile, Boston is holding Anthony Simons and his $27.7 million contract. It is exactly the type of piece that can anchor a major trade deadline offer without harming cap stability. Picks would almost certainly need to be attached, but when a franchise is in championship mode, every decision circles back to one question: will the move increase the chances of winning a title? And that brings us back to the audition everyone keeps talking about. If Friday night really was Claxton showcasing what he can be on a contender, did Brad Stevens just witness the missing piece to unlock Boston's ceiling? If Boston sees an opportunity to add a young, evolving, two-way center who just tore apart their defense in their own building, how do they justify walking away? The deadline is approaching. Rosters across the league are shifting, and the Celtics are one major decision away from solidifying their title pursuit. So now, the question becomes unavoidable. When the trade window opens, will Boston let Claxton go somewhere else? Or will they strike before another contender does? Jonathan Kuminga has suddenly become one of the most talked about names in league circles, and the possibility of the Boston Celtics trying to negotiate with the Golden State Warriors for the dynamic wing is gaining momentum. What seemed like simple speculation has turned into a realistic scenario, especially with the trade deadline approaching at full speed and uncertainty surrounding the timeline of Jason Tatum's return later in the 2025-2026 season. The pressure on Brad Stevens is real, and the question is simple. Should the Celtics make a bold, win now move while the window is open, or wait and risk watching another contender take advantage first? Anthony Simons is the center of this discussion. He is talented, he can score, he has value, but the fit has never been perfect. Joe Mazzulla has struggled to fully trust him on the defensive end, and that becomes a problem in playoffs basketball. Boston could decide to flip Simons while his expiring deal still has significant value, and the idea is already circulating. Swap Simons and Sam Hauser in a 3-team deal that would bring Jonathan Kuminga to Boston. Kuminga carries a cap hit of $22.5 million this season along with a team option, essentially making him an expiring contract. His two-way presence and elite physical profile match Boston's needs perfectly. A wing who can defend, attack, and share the toughest defensive assignments with Jaylen Brown when Tatum comes back. In theory, that is exactly the type of player a title run demands. Sam Hauser is valuable, no question, but moving his contract worth $45 million through the 2028 to 2029 season in exchange for a virtually expiring contract gives Boston future cap flexibility that could be decisive. The financial logic makes sense. The basketball fit makes sense. The urgency of this season makes sense. The tension rises when the conversation shifts to what Golden State would want. A third team such as the Utah Jazz could absorb Simons' expiring deal, leaving the Warriors with Hauser, Georges Niang, and one more Boston asset. That last piece is the turning point. Hugo Gonzalez is the most attractive. Luka Garza, Xavier Tillman, and Baylor Skierman would not move the needle. Josh Minott, Chris Boucher, or Jordan Walsh might draw curiosity, but not conviction. The Warriors want to maximize the final years of Stephen Curry. They want players who help them win right now. And if another suitor offers a more aggressive package, Boston could be pushed into a position where Gonzalez becomes the deciding factor. That is where the negotiation becomes dangerous. Is one season of Kuminga and Kyle Anderson worth giving up Horza, Simons and Gonzalez? Would Brad Stevens really be willing to sacrifice that much long-term value for a short-term ceiling? Boston is already operating under a championship standard and every rival knows it. Teams will try to squeeze them. At the same time, refusing to act could result in watching Kuminga land in the hands of a direct competitor and shift the balance of power. Both decisions come with risk, and both could define the season. So now, the biggest question hangs over the organization with even more urgency. With the trade clock ticking, will Boston step forward and fight for Kuminga, or will they stand still and let another team take the player who might be the final piece to a title? Jaylen Brown has always been a cornerstone of the Boston Celtics culture. A top draft pick from 2016 who helped carry the franchise to 6 Eastern Conference Finals in 9 seasons. But the public never knew how close Boston came to losing him. Brown has now admitted that he was planning to walk away from the Celtics after years of trade rumors and frustration. His future in Boston was not guaranteed, and the league was preparing for a possible breakup of the Tatum and Brown era. What kept that from happening was not money, not a front office promise, but the voice of one of the biggest legends in the game. In a moment that stunned fans, Brown revealed that Tracy McGrady pulled him aside and gave him a direct message. Stay, win where you are, take advantage of your opportunity. According to Brown, McGrady convinced him that chasing a bigger role somewhere else would not match the value of winning in Boston. To understand the weight of that conversation, Brown grew up idolizing McGrady and Kobe Bryant. He expected McGrady to encourage independence, just like the moment he left Toronto to become a star by himself. Instead, the NBA legend told him to do the opposite. Brown listened. That advice made the 2020 championship even more meaningful because Brown knew how close he came to pursuing individual success instead of staying loyal to Boston. The turning point was not talent. Brown has always believed he is capable of being the #1 scorer on another team. He admitted he felt limited, especially during stretches when things got rough in Boston. He questioned whether it was time to leave to become the lead star somewhere else, to take more shots, to get more spotlight, to silence the trade rumors that followed him for years. The desire to prove himself was real, and the opportunity elsewhere was tempting. The only thing that stopped him was trusting the idea that winning matters more than individual numbers. Now, the question becomes more complex. The NBA today is not like old eras where superstars stayed with one franchise for life. Salary cap pressure and roster turnover could test loyalty again. Boston must maintain a championship level when Jason Tatum returns, reinforce the roster around the duo, and prove to Brown that staying is still the right call. The next years will determine whether he retires a Celtic or whether the trade talk and temptation of individual stardom resurface. If Brown already considered leaving once, what happens if the organization fails to give him the environment he expects? Could he change his mind again when his next big decision arrives? Celtics fans need to watch closely and stay alert because nothing in the modern NBA is guaranteed. If you want to be the first to know how this story unfolds, hit the like button, subscribe, and click the hype button because the future of Jaylen Brown in Boston is officially on the clock.